everyone. As I started to prep for this session, the first thing I did was Google about Gen Z. The definitions ranged from Zoomers to consumers succeeding millennials and preceding Generation Alpha to those born to younger baby boomers and Generation X. Some pretty daunting stuff, I'm sure many of you will agree. I'm not sure if there are any Gen Z audiences today, but if you're here, we have a lot to learn from you. There are over 100 million Gen Z consumers in India today. The perfect time to decode this cohort of consumers. It is my pleasure to welcome Nandita Sinha, Chief Executive of Myntra, on this Fireside chat at the ETRetail event. Nandita needs no introduction. She is leading Myntra, one of the country's largest platforms for fashion, beauty, and lifestyle. She's a Gen Z mom herself, and her social guilty pleasure, you guessed it, is Instagram. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ratna. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, to begin with, I'd like to start with the overarching theme. You know, India has the largest young population in the world today. And there's an explosion happening in beauty and fashion. How much is Gen Z contributing to this growth?
I think, the way that at Myntra we look at Gen Z is not about what's actually happening today, but what actually is going to happen in the next few years. 52% of the population in this country is, below the age of 35. There are around 115 million Gen Z consumers in the country. 1 in 5 urban consumer today is a Gen Z consumer. And like you said, the definitions of age vary across different platforms that you read about. But I think what's very evident is that this Gen Z consumer, there are 3 very distinct things about this Gen Z consumer. One is the fact that they are digitally native consumers. They were born with the smartphone, and therefore their behavior, their experiences, and their expectations, and the ease with which they actually consume both data, information, as well as inspiration from the internet is very different. The second one is that for these consumers, actually, the aspiration and the inspiration of what's happening across the world is global. They are not limited by what's happening locally around them or what's happening around them in their circle or their geography. They are very, very quickly influenced by what's happening across the world. They spend 8 hours on the internet. So in the past where you had to go to a mall once a week to experience fashion, or you had to go to a movie, or you had to read a magazine or watch a television show. Now these consumers are being exposed to a fashion trend every 8 hours, right? So that's the pace at which their aspiration, inspiration is changing, increasing. And I think the third most important part for all of us today in the room is that they are increasingly becoming a part of the workforce, and their spending power is increasing. So what used to be a consumer who was only influencing trends in a certain way, or who was dictating, or who was actually only consuming trends, will now actually start consuming products and brands and shopping experiences in a very big way, in a very meaningful way in the next few years actually. And that is what it makes, it's very relevant for Myntra as a platform to really look at this consumer set and say that as this consumer set is growing, as consumption is growing, how do we really cater to the distinct needs of Gen Z? So that's how I would characterize what the opportunity of Gen Z is. They are going to be our mainstream. Like a few years back, being a millennial was young. People were talking about, what do we do with millennials? How do we create experiences for them? Actually, that is where Gen Z is today. All of us have to be creating experiences for Gen Z because they are the next tidal wave of shoppers for all of us.
Some very interesting points there, Nandita, which brings me to my next question. At Myntra, you've introduced various platforms like My Fashion GPT and Myntra Minis, etc. All of them have a very young vibe, so to say. Obviously, they're targeted at Gen Z. I want to know what went behind creating these platforms.
I think we figured that there are 3 things which really Gen Zers or Zoomers are looking for when they are shopping for lifestyle, fashion, and beauty. And the 3 things were, first of all, proliferation of trends, right? So they are looking for new trends all the time, whether they are going and attending a party or they're going to college or even, like having a coffee. I think they want looks, they want trends, they're influenced by what's happening globally. And therefore, the first thing that we did is that how do we create a trend-first platform on Myntra? I think the other thing which is very important that it is not just, and therefore we launched something called Forward, which is a Gen Z platform, which is specialized experience for Gen Zers. And it has, 500 plus international as well as Indian trend-first brands. We have almost 65,000 styles live on the platform, and we drop 1,500 styles every week. So I think first was to really create a very quarantined experience for Gen Zers, which is very trend-first and gives them an opportunity to look at trends in a very different way. I think the second thing we realized is that discovery is a still unsolved problem for everybody, including Gen Zers. And they are not just looking for discovery of trends, but also some amount of, there is this proliferation of celebrity stylists. So Gen Zers are also looking for their own stylists. And therefore, we said that how do we create that opportunity for them on the platform through My Fashion GPT, which is a very cool generative AI feature where you can ask a question, what do I wear to the ET E-Commerce Summit, and you could get an answer, or what do I wear for a wedding? And My Stylist, which is about looking at products that consumers have browsed through, and then creating an ensemble and look for them. So we created discovery as an opportunity. I think still consumers look for inspiration, especially the Gen Zers, and therefore a lot of work on social commerce. Myntra was the first platform to introduce social commerce in the country, and we have different formats for it. There is static, which is Myntra Studio. There is video, which is very, very popular amongst the consumers, and then which is Myntra Live, and then there is Myntra Minis, because consumers, Gen Zers, have a very short attention span, and therefore you're looking to create very snackable content for them. I think the third was, how do you make buying trends very easy? And therefore, there was a feature which we leveraged our photo search to say spot it and shop it. So you can take a screenshot anywhere on Instagram, etc., forward it to Myntra, and you'll do a photo search and you'll find the trend on Myntra. Daily drops that we introduce, and a lot of trend-first curation that happens. So I think all of these features were built to create three distinct experiences. One, Gen Zers want a different experience, so how do you create it through Forward? How do you create discovery and almost education and inspiration both coming together through various generative AI tools? And finally, how do you create inspiration through social commerce content that we have? So those were the three pillars that we have used actually to continue to build innovation in Myntra. I think a lot of our innovation is built on who is the new consumer set coming in. And one of the biggest consumer sets that we are seeing coming in into the system is the Gen Z consumer.
Absolutely. Talking about trends, Nandita, what trends do you expect to stay, and what do you expect to change? What do you think will change? Because as you yourself said, I'm taking a cue from what you just said, that these consumers change their minds very, very frequently. Yeah. Yeah. So how difficult is it to, predict trends?
I think, and I'll split this question into two parts. I think one on fashion, what will stay about Gen Zers actually is the fact that I think I think there are two or three behavioral trends which they exhibit, and I think they will continue to exhibit. I think one is that they are very trend forward. So if you look at trends which are made famous by movies and pop culture, etc., like whether it's the Barbie trend, or like I went for Oppenheimer and I actually saw people wearing the fedora caps also, because like that's what they want to do, right? So they want to pick up trends that are coming from pop culture, or Gothic, which became very popular with a Wednesday. So I think they will continue to pick up trends from across the world, across different, different parts of pop culture, and continue to adopt them. I think what is also very important is, I think one word that really describes Gen Z, which is very distinct from their predecessors, is they're very authentic, and they will continue to be authentic. They want to express themselves, they want to stay true to themselves. And they're also very individualistic in the way that they, they'll take a trend, but they will present it in a manner which is very individual to them. They are also very community focused, and at the same time very value focused also, because their wallets are today a little smaller than what they may be tomorrow. So I think these are the 3 or 4 things which will continue to be true for them. They will be authentic, they will continue to be early adopters of trends, and I think they will have a very fine balance between being individualistic as well as being community focused. So I think those are the things which will continue. As far as fashion is concerned, I think people are breaking free of their skinny jeans and they're wearing oversized clothes. And they're taking trends from social media, from pop culture, from movies, from music. That I think will continue to happen. And I think what's interesting is that the proliferation of the trends, how fast they come in and how fast they get adopted. Like I think we saw a 500% search increase for Barbie core, hot pink on our platform. So I think will continue to happen.
Very interesting that you say this, Nandita, which brings me to my next question. What about tier 2 and tier 3 consumers? When we interview CEOs across sectors, a lot of them say that these consumers want to emulate, their peers in the bigger cities. So, what about your experience? What do you have to say about this?
I think from a perspective of the exposure that tier 2, tier 3 Gen Zers have or Zoomers have is the same as their metro counterparts, right? So they are watching the same films. All of them are watching K-pop serials. They're trying to learn Korean on Duolingo. They're following the same sports. So actually the sources of inspiration continue to be the same. I think what differs a little bit is that the pace at which the adoption happens. But I think that what's increasingly happening as we see our own platform, like if we take global brands which are introducing a lot of trends in the country today for us, we see almost 40% of our international business sales coming from T2, T3. So while the exposure is the same, and now with e-commerce, actually the access is the same. So I think that's something which is really consumers are able to kind of access that. So the gap that used to be between access and aspiration in T2, T3 is coming down significantly. I think the other thing is that both in metro and tier 1 as well as in tier 2 cities, the need to experiment and the ability to experiment and openness to experiment is very high. And therefore, I think what is also happening very slowly is that, quite interestingly is that not only that do you have big incumbent brands, but there are D2C brands which all of these Gen Zers are adopting. So I think they want to experiment, they want to try new things, and they want to actually adopt brands which stand for their own, either their point of view or value system, etc. So I think these trends we are seeing happen across both metro as well as T2, T3.
Okay, on that note, I'd like to draw your attention to the challenges in addressing this cohort of consumers. One is, of course, that they change their minds very often. But apart from that, the bigger challenge seems to be that these consumers have access to information. They're on social media. They watch OTT platforms, and whether they are metro consumers or the ones in tier 2, tier 3. So how difficult is it to get brand loyalty from these consumers and brand stickiness?
I think, two things. Actually, I think Gen Z consumers, rightfully so, are very, they know their mind, like they may change their mind, but they know their mind and they want exactly what they want. So I think they are very demanding. And the two things that they will continue to demand from brands and retailers and platforms is, first of all, how they want their mind and their need for trends is really very, very, they're on a hamster wheel. How quickly can you actually respond to their needs of trends? So how quickly can you introduce the trends that they are seeking? I think that's going to be a challenge for everyone, brands, platforms, because I think their pace is faster than everybody else's pace. What is also important is that they are big technology, their technology adoption will be high. So I think, how are you really looking at innovation through technology? Again, are you constantly at the cutting edge of it, or are you a follower? I think that will be one of the challenges. And I think third would be really to balance trend first, brand first, and value first mindset that they have. So I think, how do you really bring the confluence of all of these three things together? Again, I think, how do you use social media, I think is very, very important. Like their way of really interacting with a brand, a celebrity, is very different from what it was earlier. So I think at Myntra, we really got into social commerce very early on, even social media. Like we have something called Forward Campus Tribe, which is about building a community of youngsters on campus who can then be advocates of Myntra Forward, which is our platform for Gen Z. So I think how do you really reach out to consumers in their native way of understanding is going to be a challenge because a lot of us are not Gen Zers, so we don't think like them. So I think that's the difference.
Right. And does pricing also play a role in influencing these consumers?
I think what, we've done a lot of extensive work with consumers, right? And I think what is important is they are value conscious, but by the way, they want to save up for what they like. So they may be value conscious, they want to get the best out of what they pay for. But there are many, many instances in which they will save up for a month to buy something that they really like. And they want to get the best of what they expect out of it. So I think it is about what value we are providing as platforms through our products and trends and innovations.
Awesome. And my last question, Nandita. I was reading various global reports which say that the Gen Z consumers are not swayed by influencers and celebrities. They, in fact, are, they make their purchase decisions depending on what their friends are saying. So how complex does it get? Because, at companies targeting Gen Z, you have to influence friends of your core target consumers.
I think what is important for Gen Zers is authenticity. So they do get influenced by celebrities, by influencers, by their friends, but they're looking for the person who's authentic. So if you look at celebrities and celebrities who are authentic about who they are and what they stand for, you actually see a lot of traction for even them endorsing something. Even influencers, and I think at the, the way the influencer industry has grown by leaps and bounds, they make the distinction between what is an authentic endorsement from an influencer versus what is not an authentic endorsement. And even within their friends, I think they are very clear that they want to be part of the crowd, but they don't want to be like, I think they are very smart and they discern what is an authentic, source of advice or influence, etc. Of course, you have to, I think there are so many platforms where people really discover a lot of things about the brands and the platforms that they shop from. And you have to continue to stay true to who you are as a platform. I think that is where you will influence whether it's their friends or the influencer or the celebrities that you work with.
Right. And final words, Nandita, what can we expect from Myntra as the next few quarters pan out, especially when India is at the cusp of, the consumption boom?
I think, we are very excited. I think we all love working on this set of customer. I think we will continue to see a lot of proliferation of trends and brands through the Forward platform. There will be a lot of, we've just signed on a celebrity endorser for Forward in the form of Khushi and Vedang. So I think you'll see a lot of them on social media. I think a lot of tech-led innovation for discovery, curation, and I think adoption of trends will continue for us. I think ultimately, even these consumers want service, so we will continue to innovate on that front also. So I think a lot of trend-led work, a lot of curated experiences, and a lot of technology-led innovation. I think you'll see all three of them from us.
That was a fabulous conversation, Nandita. Lots of insights, lots of forecasts. And to sum it up, the Gen Z is here to trailblaze consumption in India. And we expect a lot more.
They are here to trailblaze. They are our future. So
absolutely. Yeah. And the future is definitely looking in very safe hands.
Thank you so much, Ratna. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita. Pleasure to talk to you.